If you're an equity research analyst, a founder, or just a retail investor trying to wrap your hat around the future of global tech, you absolutely cannot skip the foundational layer. I mean, before you analyze any individual tech platform, e-commerce giant, or streaming service in India, you have to master the bedrock they all rely on. So today, in this explainer, we're doing a top-down, documentary-style deconstruction of India's telecom industry. We're going to look at the pipes, the policies, and the fascinating economics that hold up the world's third largest digital economy. Let's dive in. 25.7 gigabytes. That is the average monthly wireless data usage per customer in India as of the third quarter of fiscal year 2026. Just pause and think about that for a second. It's a staggering figure. It actually surpasses consumption in developed markets like the USA. When you have over 1 billion people consuming that much data every single month, the physical infrastructure required to actually support it is mind-bending. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how we got here. The evolution of mobile telephony in India has basically moved through 3 distinct phases. From 1995 to around 2005, the 2G era, a mobile phone was essentially a luxury communication device. Voice calls were incredibly expensive. Then we move into the utility phase of basic 2G and 3G data. But the real inflection point, the moment everything changed, hit in 2016. That was the great telecom disruption that sparked India's mobile-first digital economy, pushing the whole country into phase 3. Today, telecom isn't just about calling, it is your digital identity. It's streaming, it's UPI payments, and it's AI assistance. So here is our investment thesis map for this explainer. We're going to systematically break this industry down from the macro to the micro. 1. The Indian digital boom. 2. Anatomy of telecom infrastructure. 3. Following the telecom money. 4. The competitive ecosystem. 5. Future trends and regulation. And finally, 6. Risks and final takeaways. Okay, let's start with part 1, the Indian digital boom, the macro thesis. You see, telecommunications is the invisible bedrock of the digital economy. Every cloud platform, every connected enterprise, every mobile payment you make, it all runs right through this specific industry's infrastructure. India's digital economy is expanding at an insane rate, currently contributing around 14% of the gross value added. But check this out. By fiscal year 2031, it's projected to jump to an astonishing $1.4 trillion, making up nearly 22% of the GDP. But here's the catch. This growth doesn't just happen magically in the ether. It is strictly fueled by the physical connectivity infrastructure we are about to analyze. Without the pipes, the entire digital economy simply stops. Now, what's really interesting about this trajectory is how aggressive it is. From 7.5 gigabytes a month back in fiscal 2019 up to 25.7 gigabytes recently, we are projected to reach a massive 59.2 gigabytes per customer by 2031. This creates a completely insatiable demand for telecom capacity. Indian telecom operators aren't just doing routine maintenance on their networks. They are constantly aggressively expanding them just to catch up with this explosive exponential demand for data. Which brings us to part 2, the anatomy of telecom infrastructure. Let's look at the physical reality of what makes the internet work. So let's walk step by step through the telecom value chain. Think about how a signal actually travels. First, you've got your equipment vendors supplying the highly specialized hardware. Then that hardware transmits over spectrum, the invisible airwaves. The antennas themselves are mounted on passive towers. From the tower, the signal travels down through underground fiber backhaul, zooming off to massive data centers, and finally reaching the consumer devices right in our hands. And every single step of this chain, it represents billions of dollars in capital expenditure. Let's demystify a crucial piece of jargon here. Spectrum. Think of spectrum literally as invisible digital real estate. It's made up of licensed radio frequencies across low, mid, and high bands that operators use to deliver wireless services like 4G and 5G. Governments auction these frequencies off, and telecom companies happily pay billions to acquire them. Why? Because without this invisible real estate, they have absolutely no product to sell. Then we have passive infrastructure. These are the non-active assets. The massive steel towers, the shelters, the power units, and the dark fiber optic cables. The really important thing to understand here is that telecom operators generally don't want to build all of this from scratch themselves. It is simply too expensive to duplicate highly capital-intensive physical builds. Instead, they rely on specialized providers. So operators will lease space on towers owned by companies like Summit Digital, or they'll use massive optic fiber networks from companies like JDPL, just to host their active radio equipment. And we really have to remember that the internet is a physical thing. Submarine cables are these high-capacity undersea fiber optic systems. Massive systems with names like AAE-1 and BBG basically act as international toll roads. They snake across the ocean floor, directly connecting Indian data centers to Europe, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East. These massive underwater cables are what make a localized network a truly global web. All right, part 3, following the telecom money. We're going to dive into the unique unit economics of running a telecom empire. Okay, let's dive into this. The telecom business model is this relentless, high-stakes balancing act between CapEx and OpEx. On one side, you have massive upfront capital expenditures, bidding in crazy spectrum auctions, rolling out nationwide 5G networks, and laying those submarine cables. On the other side, you have operating expenses, maintaining the network, running customer care, managing billing systems, and acquiring new customers. You literally pour billions into CapEx upfront just to earn it back, slowly, rupee by rupee, on the OpEx side. So how do they actually earn all that capital back? Through ARPU, the average revenue per user. If you are a telecom investor, this is your holy grail metric. ARPU measures the average monthly revenue generated from each individual customer. The entire industry's goal is to constantly push that ARPU higher, which usually happens when users consume more data, when they upgrade to a higher value 5G plan, or when they adopt bundled digital service packs that include cloud storage and streaming. But here's where the Indian market is uniquely fascinating. In India, operators earn a mere 7.9 rupees. That's about 10 cents per gigabyte. Now, contrast that with the USA, where operators make nearly 240 rupees, or about $2.70 for that exact same gigabyte. This staggering pricing gap means Indian telecoms are offering some of the world's most affordable data. So to achieve profitability, they absolutely cannot rely on high margins. They have to rely on massive, unprecedented continental scale.
Moving on to part 4, the competitive ecosystem. Let's map out the battlefield.
We are looking at a highly symbiotic ecosystem here. You've got the government and the Department of Telecommunications acting as the regulators and referees. Telecom operators build and operate the actual connection pipes. Tower and fiber companies provide the physical support structures. Cloud, data centers, and OTT platforms, like your favorite streaming apps, create the content that fills those pipes up. And finally, you have enterprise users who integrate these networks to run modern global businesses. Now, because of those intense capital requirements we just talked about, this sector has seen incredible consolidation. I mean, today, the top 3 players hold over 97% of the mobile broadband market share in India. The barriers to entry are practically insurmountable for a new startup. In this industry, deep infrastructure investment and scale are the ultimate moats defending the incumbent businesses. Next up, Part 5, Future Trends and Regulation. The catalysts that will shape the next decade. First, let's look at the regulatory environment. The Telecommunications Act of 2023 is a monumental shift. It modernizes the legislative framework by enforcing spectrum assignment by auction, simplifying the right-of-way rules so operators can lay down cables way faster, and introducing a central adjudicatory mechanism for disputes. Basically, it creates a predictable policy landscape. And that is absolutely essential when companies are pouring trillions of rupees into long-term infrastructure that takes decades to pay off. And that predictable policy landscape paves the way for some incredible advanced technology trends. The industry is aggressively pivoting beyond just consumer mobile data. The future drivers here are standalone 5G and dedicated private 5G for automated factories. They're utilizing artificial intelligence to self-optimize antenna tilts and balance network loads. We're seeing edge computing deployed closer to the user for ultra-low latency, and vast numbers of enterprises migrating into the cloud. Basically, the telecom of tomorrow is evolving into an AI-powered cloud service provider. Finally, Part 6, Risks and Final Takeaways. Let's look objectively at the operational hazards. Look, while the upside is undeniably huge, the risks are substantial. A macroeconomic slowdown could totally stall ARPU growth as consumers tighten their budgets. There's also the persistent, heavy burden of intense capital expenditure debt. Strict data privacy regulations and massive potential fines from regulators like TRAI are constant operational hazards. Add to that the risk of high customer churn and increasingly sophisticated cybersecurity threats, and you quickly see that managing a telecom giant is an absolute high-wire act. Which leaves us with one final provocative question. Why is it absolutely vital to analyze this telecom infrastructure before investing anywhere else in the broader digital economy? Because a rising digital tide lifts all tech stocks, but absolutely none of them survive without this physical telecom bedrock. Whether it's e-commerce, cloud computing, or the next big AI startup, they are all just passengers. Telecom is the highway. Understand the highway and you understand the future of the digital economy. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one.